Hi guys, this is Aditya this side,
Hi, this is Akash.
and we hope you're doing well within this pandemic once again. And we're back with another video as we promised last time.
Yep, and this time, unlike our last video, which was a very light-hearted moving to the UK day one kind of video, we're picking up on a topic which is possibly pertinent to every single person involved in any kind of healthcare.
Absolutely. So today we'll be talking about research, which, as you would know, is a very, very important part of any doctor's career today in today's world, especially.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a saying, I don't know if you guys have come across, it's called publish or perish. And because of this, research has become a quintessential part of every doctor's or even healthcare professionals' portfolio nowadays.
Yes, and we understand that it's not everybody's cup of tea. Everybody does not essentially have an aptitude for research, or some people I might actually go on to say just run away from the idea of research and the thought of trying to collect data and understand it and then write it up. It's a huge task.
So you essentially mean someone like me. Uh, so the idea of this video is essentially to cater to people who don't have much of a knack for research, because there are obviously certain people who have an aptitude for research, and they it comes naturally to them to be able to find out topics, to research on it, and to write up and publish it, whereas many people like me often struggle to try and grasp what is actually needed, and it takes a lot of hard work and effort to actually get something out there. But through our experiences, we want to bring this video and we want to talk about how can someone who's not inherently inclined towards research still build a portfolio which caters to the current times.
And essentially, what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about the different kinds of research strategies and the different kind of publications that one can do during their training or afterwards, and what is probably a more appropriate study or an appropriate publication that you can realistically approach during your training. And it's essentially, as we're going to title it, an idiot's guide to research, coming from two idiots who are trying to do this themselves.
True. And we won't be talking too much about the scientific or the technical aspects of research, more about what kind of research is feasible at what points and what would give you the most optimum output for the least amount of effort put in.
Absolutely. And to take ahead from there, I think step one for all of this is to identify the need for research, to identify the need, that the weightage it carries or its importance in your career, how it reflects on your resume, whether you're applying for a job or you're actually trying a career in academics. Either way, in whether you're in India or in UK or any part of the world, research has become a very, very, very important tool to help you and move forward in your career. And that's essentially one of the landmarks that people can have an idea or gauge your academic inclination, no matter where you go.
Absolutely. Now that we all agree that we've certain that research is essential, you want to talk about the different levels of evidence for different kinds of research you do. We'll start by talking about the different kinds of studies that are generally out there and can be done. We'll start from the bottom and build our way up.
And we're using the reference tool as coming from University of Winona, which is a 2020 recent publication that they've come out with, which gives us, which talks about evidence-based medicine, and have come up with 7 levels of evidence.
We'll provide the link below this video, so we won't go down into the definition of each of the different kinds of studies, but stick to, again, just talking very superficially about the different kinds and how you can do what. So getting to the main part of this video now, starting from the bottom, the first thing that you can probably do is maybe an article review or a case study. And I think both the the headings are pretty much self-explanatory, where an article review is a review of whatever article you read, and you provide a documentary or an understanding that you have from that particular article. Whereas a case study is talking about a particular interesting case that you've come across, and probably adds to the scientific data or the knowledge out there.
Absolutely. So level 7, as you mentioned, is at the bottom of the pyramid, and it's the first, and it is a primary source of information that you would get. So it essentially caters to things like a singular case study or a personal opinion by a very senior surgeon who might say that, I've operated so many patients or treated so many patients, and in my professional opinion with experience, this is the best line of treatment. So that is the weakest form of evidence that you can come across, and it is a level 7.
True. Building up, you have something called a case series, which is essentially a combination of case studies. So if you have more than one interesting case, it would qualify as a case series.
Absolutely. And if you have the data and you've got all the information to back up your claims, and you can manage to publish it in an effective and in a good publication, then obviously it goes up a notch, and then it becomes a level 6 evidence.
Super. So moving on from case studies, you have something called a retrospective study, where you actually go back, you dig up data which is already available in hospital records or in systems, and you look for patterns within those data, and you find out associations. These are done. These studies are done on events that have happened in the past, so that's why they're called retrospective. And similarly, in the same breath, any study that you devise today and you recruit patients in the future, and then study associations become a prospective study.
Yes, and retrospective studies can either be a cohort study or a case control study, and those are the studies that you go back in time essentially, and you look at the data that may not be your data. Somebody else might have collected that data for you, or maybe you just go back into your hospital systems and find that data in retrospect, that you have an hypothesis and you want to test it using retrospective data. That essentially becomes a case control study or a retrospective cohort study.
The next thing that you have is something called a randomized controlled trial, which is obviously a very strong kind of study, but not easy to do, which involves different kinds of randomization, single blind, double blind, triple blind. We're not getting into the nuances of these studies, but it's for you to know that there's something called an RCT. And moving up, you have other things like a systematic review or a meta-analysis.
So the key point about an RCT is that it moves forward in time. I think it is one of the strongest kinds of studies that you can do at an individual or at a group level, in which where the idea is that you've got an hypothesis, but you want to test it in real time and into going into the future. So you've got an hypothesis, and then you devise an intervention, and then you compare the two groups moving forward in time and the results. So an RCT can last for years and years. You can start in 2020 and then maybe end it in 2030. And the longer follow-up you have, the stronger is the level of the RCT, and the stronger is the evidence. And similarly, from all the studies that you mentioned, we've gone up to level 6. So a level 5 is essentially a systematic review, which is a review of all case cohort studies and quantitative studies and that becomes a level 5 evidence, whereas cohort studies and case control studies are level 4.
Absolutely. Moving on, we'll talk about a little bit about meta-analysis and systematic reviews. These are basically a review of all those articles that are already published and out there in the scientific community. And if you pick up a topic, you then decide what are you going to look at, and you go and try and find as many studies as you can. You narrow them down, and you set inclusion criteria, pick the papers that are pertinent to what you're looking at, and try and find what is the evidence present in them. If you run statistical analysis on these kind of informations, they go from being a systematic review to becoming a meta-analysis.
Absolutely. And the more studies you include and the higher level evidence of studies that you include in these, the higher the strength of your systematic review and meta-analysis goes up. So if you're using very weak case control studies and cohort studies to do a systematic review on them, like I mentioned, it would be a level 5 evidence. But if you take a very well made randomized controlled trial, and if you have a systematic review which is based on multiple RCTs, then it obviously becomes a high level, a level 1 evidence. Or if you do a meta-analysis of all of these studies, then it becomes a level 1 evidence. Similarly, I think as we've gone up to level 4, the level 2 is obviously a very well designed RCT, which can be a multi-centric RCT, which involves many hospitals. And then the last one is the level 3. The difference between is a level 3 and a level 2 RCT, or a study rather, actually, is the key would be word is the randomization. If you do an intervention and compare it to a control group that you have, and then but you don't randomize your subjects, then it's level 3 evidence. But if you follow the proper path of an RCT and randomize them, it becomes a level 2 evidence.
Brilliant. So if you guys have any doubts, we suggest you refer to the link below. Have a read, and I'm sure it should clear up your doubts.
Yeah, and at this time we're going to touch upon what at what stage what study would be the best one and the most easiest one to go ahead with.
And this is possibly the more interesting part of the video. And we're drawing from experiences from our own time, having done our undergrad, our postgrad, and eventually into our professional careers. I think the one thing that you can possibly start with, and which can introduce you to the research work, is doing an article review or something like a case study or a case series, because these are generally easier to do studies, which can introduce you to the idea of researching for articles, reading, understanding what are the key points, figuring out how to actually extract the most valuable data from them, and how to then get used to scientific writing to actually write a paper, structuring it, referencing papers, which is actually as important as writing them.
In my personal opinion, I would say that if you're an intern level doctor, a foundation level doctor, and you want to get into research, the easiest thing would be to start off is a case study or a singular case study, in which you're working in a hospital. I see something that you've read about but never seen in life, and your consultant agrees that it's something different, something new. That's a good way to just pick up the case and taking examples from other case studies. Try and structure your case study and write it and present it somewhere. However, having said that, it's important to know that a case study is probably the lowest level of evidence. But once you understand how a case study is done, you can always move on to a case series and move up the ladder of the levels of evidence.
Absolutely, because in practical world, case study and case series do not really add a lot of weightage to your portfolio. So while it is important to get started slow, it's also important to build up to better stuff. And once you've had a bit of a taste of how to write a paper, how to do literature reviews, how to do a research, it's advisable that you move on to doing something like a retrospective or a prospective study based on where you are, the kind of support system you have, the kind of personnel you have at your disposal. If you have a good mentor or a guide who can guide you through the nuances of doing a research like this, I'd suggest for someone who would say probably in the years of early postgraduate training during the JR2, JR3 ship, a retrospective or a prospective study would be good. Now, the problem here with the prospective study is they usually take time, because the key here being follow-up. When you're in a postgrad training course, your time is limited, and you want to make sure that you leave enough time to finish the study, analyze the data, and also get out to publishing it. So again, while prospective studies are good, they might not be feasible, because they can often take quite a bit of time from the point of conception to an actual publication.
Exactly like you mentioned, again, I would completely agree with you. So if you enter a training program in terms of surgical program, and you know that you are spending 3 to 4 years in a dedicated department with the same people that it's more practical and feasible with the help of your colleagues to design a study which will last in time for the next 2 to 3 years. If it's a cohort retrospective study, then obviously the level of evidence is slightly lower than a prospective one. But it just depends on what you want to research, what your plan is, and what area of medicine you're practicing in, and what kind of follow-up you're looking at. It can be a short-term, long-term. There are lots of variations on where you work, and moving up, I think the most difficult and challenging is obviously a randomized controlled trial.
Absolutely. We won't touch too much into a randomized controlled trial because that's slightly beyond the scope of this video. Similarly, for a meta-analysis and a systematic review, these are things which is possibly suitable for someone who's obviously had some experience in retrospective or prospective studies and can then move on to trying to devise an RCT or a meta-analysis or a systematic review.
Once you're at a stage where you can interpret each and every study critically, and there's a very popular word which is a critical appraisal of a study. If you can do that confidently in these smaller level studies, then you can obviously move on to systematic reviews. And just to give a one line, there are many reviews that you can see and read and see how they're done. And there are certain tools like the Prisma tool which you need to follow to do a systematic review.
Absolutely. Now, just to summarize what you said, we're going to finish off with some key pointers that you must remember and that you can take away from this video is don't try to overachieve. Understand that while case studies and case series do not add a lot of weightage to your portfolio, they're a great way to get started. Personally, that's how I started, and I got a good knack of understanding how to actually approach writing a paper, and then built up to doing retrospective and prospective studies eventually. Secondly, try and understand that quality research trumps quantity of research any day. Any keen eye will very quickly find out what is a quality research versus a quantity research. Try whatever research you do, always try and ensure that you can publish it. You can start by publishing in a local journal, in a state level journal, in a national or international journal. Obviously, the level of difficulty in trying to get publications increases, and there are certain journals that actually charge a hefty sum of money to actually get a publication as well.
More the stronger the journal, the more eyes you will have for scrutiny over your paper, and obviously the more difficult it will be to get published. And obviously it has to be something new, it has to be something different, but that's something for when you have a lot of practice in publishing. Another thing that I would want to say is, another point to remember is that I always think is bad to bank upon is always ask for help. It's not something that you can do independently on your own. You always have to take your
What
colleagues.
you actually mean is delegate.
Well, delegate, but if you take your colleagues in your studies and take them along ahead, you will need their help, and I assure you, you will need their help at some point. Uh, I think it's always a better way to take everybody forward and move ahead in all kinds of research that you do.
Absolutely. So we'll call this video, cut this video short here. I hope this helps understanding what kind of stuff can be done at different levels. And it helps people out there. We are again always available. Reach out to us at our email addresses or leave a comment down below, and we'll try our best to get back to you as soon as possible. We are open to suggestions to the next video that you'd like us to make as well.
And you can leave your comments down there, and we're going to leave our email IDs as well. And I think we've been doing a few of these videos, and it would be very helpful for us if you could leave more feedback as to what more you would expect from us.
That is the best reward we can have. Anyways, guys, look after yourself. Take care during the pandemic, and we'll be back again very soon with another fun and interesting video. Bye-bye. Good night.